I used to ignore messages and tell myself I'd reply later. Till one night, something in my room reminded me what later really costs. I never believed loneliness could be terrifying. To me, loneliness meant peace, but now I understand some silences aren't peaceful, they wait. Everything started at a time when there was no one in my life, no one to talk to, no one to text. Day after day, I only talked to myself. That day was no different. It was almost 1 a.m., the lights were off, and I was sitting on the sofa. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching it. It was just there so the silence wouldn't feel too loud. Suddenly, I felt like someone moved inside the room. I glanced around, nothing. I laughed at myself. This is what happens when you're alone for too long, I thought. That's when I noticed the TV volume was off. I hadn't touched the remote. The power hadn't gone out. The TV had muted itself. I stood up. As I walked, I noticed the air in the room felt strange, heavy, as if someone had been breathing there for a long time. I went to the kitchen to get some water. While filling the glass, I heard it, a long sigh, like a human sigh, tired, full of sadness. I froze. The sound came from behind me. I turned around. No one was there. But inside my chest, I felt something like someone was watching me for a long time. I forced myself to calm down. You imagined it, I told myself. I walked back to the room with the glass. Sat on the sofa and looked at the TV. That's when words appeared on the screen. You forgot me. I jumped to my feet. It wasn't a channel, not an advertisement. White text on a black screen. My throat went dry. I grabbed the remote and turned the TV off. The room went dark, and in that moment I understood I wasn't alone. Because very close to me, so close I could feel the warmth of breath on my skin, someone was standing there, not saying anything, just standing. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then very slowly, in a very calm voice, it said, I just wanted to talk. The voice wasn't terrifying. Instead, it was sad. So sad, like no one had listened for a long time. I didn't realize then that after those words, my life would never be the same. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, but my mind was still working. I just wanted to talk. The line kept echoing in my head. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was tired. I took a deep breath. Even though I was scared, one thing was clear. If this really was something, it could have hurt me already. I slowly said, "Who are you?" Hearing my own voice startled me. It sounded so weak. So broken. A few seconds of silence. Then the voice again, "You really don't know." The question hit my chest, because inside it was accusation, hurt. I closed my eyes. Suddenly images appeared in my mind, an old house, a window, a lamp glowing at night. I opened my eyes and looked around. The room didn't feel the same anymore. The walls looked a little more faded. The shadows were unnaturally long. Said, "I don't know you." This time the voice came very close, so close it felt like someone was speaking into my ear. That's what hurts the most. My heart skipped. Suddenly I felt I used to know someone like this, someone I tried to forget. But why? I collapsed onto the sofa. My legs were shaking. I said, "What do you want?" There was no answer for a long time. I thought maybe it was over. Then the lights went out. The entire room went dark again, but this darkness was different. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was the darkness of memory. As I looked around, I realized I was no longer in my room. I was standing in a small room, old, cracked walls. A broken chair in the corner. I knew this place. No matter how hard I tried, I could never forget this room. A pressure built in my chest. I whispered, "Why is this here?" The answer came from behind me, "Because this is where you last saw me." I turned around. I saw no one, but I knew it was here. This room was tied to a memory. One night, one sentence, and one decision. A decision I still try to forget. I said, "I'm sorry." I don't know why I said it, but it felt like those words had been trapped inside me for a long time. The air in the room grew heavy. The voice changed slightly, clearer than before, more human. "You didn't say that back then." My eyes filled with tears. I know this story isn't just scary. It's a story of guilt. A story of forgetting, and those things never really leave. They come back. I slowly walked toward the center of the room. There was something written on the floor. I bent down to look. The handwriting was mine. "Tomorrow I will leave." My head started spinning. Did I leave someone behind, or did I leave someone alone? The voice spoke one last time, "You just left," and I waited. That waiting was the terrifying part. I sank to the floor, cold cement beneath my feet, but my body was burning. "Tomorrow I will leave." I didn't need more time to understand. I had written this. The handwriting was mine, the rush in the words, the fear, everything was mine. But who had I written it for? As soon as I closed my eyes, the memories collapsed. There was a time when I avoided someone. I intentionally didn't answer calls, replied late to messages. I thought, "I'll talk later." Later never came. The air shifted. It felt like someone was standing very close. I whispered, "I didn't know it would be like this." There was no immediate answer. Then in a very calm, very broken voice, "No one ever knows until it's too late." Hearing that, my chest shattered. Because I had heard that line before, I stood up. The room began to change slowly. The cracks in the walls grew wider. The shadows started to move as if they were alive. I understood I was walking inside a memory. Suddenly, the door opened. On the other side was a dark corridor. Very long, the end was impossible to see. I knew I had to walk that path. The moment I took my first step, I heard it, footsteps, but they weren't mine. Someone was walking behind me. I stopped. The sound stopped. I started walking again. The sound started again. I said, "Why are you behind me?" The answer came, "I was always there." My body shuddered when I heard that, because it was true. So many people exist in our lives, but we don't look at them. We don't listen. We think there's time. Suddenly, images appeared on the corridor walls. I looked. I saw myself, phone in hand, irritation on my face. Beside it, a shadow looking at me, waiting. My throat went dry. I said I was busy. The voice grew firmer this time. "You weren't busy, you just didn't want to." After hearing that, I couldn't stand anymore. I sank to the floor. I understood this fear wasn't of a monster. This fear was of losing myself. I whispered, "If I go back, can I fix it?" A long silence. Then the answer, "You already came back." I lifted my head. At the end of the corridor, there was a door. It was slowly opening. Light was coming from inside, soft, warm light. But what I saw inside that light, that was the most terrifying thing. I saw myself. Alone in the same room, sitting on the same sofa. Where I'm standing now, I wasn't there then. I understood this story was now a loop, and I was getting trapped inside it. The voice spoke very close. "Now you will wait." I stood in front of the door. The light inside didn't hurt my eyes, but my mind filled with unease. Because I knew what was on the other side wasn't unfamiliar. It was me. As the door fully opened, I stepped inside. The room was exactly my current room. The same sofa, the same window, the same TV. And sitting on the sofa was me. He was staring at his phone screen, tired eyes, annoyance on his face. I walked toward him. I tried to call out to him, but no sound came out. That's when I realized he couldn't see me. I was here, but I didn't exist. That feeling was the most terrifying of all. Suddenly, the TV screen lit up. Words appeared. "This is how it started." I looked back. No one was there, but the presence was, as always. I stood beside the sofa, staring at myself. I watched. I put the phone down and started to get up. Just then, the TV volume muted itself. I froze, because I knew what came next. As I walked toward the kitchen, I heard my own voice say, "I'm just going to get some water." I had said that line before. This was that night. I realized I was watching that night again. I ran toward the kitchen. That presence moved behind me. As I poured water into the glass, I heard a long sigh, exactly the same as before. I wanted to scream, "Don't turn around," but time couldn't be changed. I watched. I turned around, saw nothing, and convinced myself that was the mistake. I looked at the presence. Now I could feel it. It wasn't a monster, no twisted face. It was just an empty space where a person should have been. I slowly said, "What are you?" The answer came, "I am the time you never gave to anyone." Those words pierced deep into my chest. I understood this wasn't a spirit. It wasn't a ghost. It was waiting. Waiting born from human neglect. I said, "Why did you come back?" The answer was simple, "Because you're in my place now." I looked toward the sofa. That version of me was standing up now. The air in the room grew heavy. The voice said, "Now you will sit and no one will come." Suddenly I understood this story isn't just mine. It can belong to anyone who thought there's time. But time doesn't wait. I slowly sat down on the sofa, picked up the phone. a notification on the screen. A message I knew if I ignored it, this story would start again. I froze. Stared at the screen, the message wasn't opened. No name, just the words, "Can you talk right now?" Such a simple question, but my body went cold because someone once asked me that. And I didn't answer. I looked around. The room was strangely calm again. No sound, no breathing, but I knew it was still there inside the silence. I rested my finger on the screen. I could reply. I still could, but I was afraid. What would happen if I replied? And if I didn't, what then? Suddenly, the space beside the sofa dipped slightly. As if someone had sat down, I slowly turned my head. I saw nothing, but I felt someone was watching from very close. I whispered, "I'm scared." The answer came very calmly. So was I, my eyes filled with tears. I thought, does fear always come from the dark, or does it come from the words we never said? I opened the message, typed, "Yes, tell me." The moment I sent it, the air in the room shifted. The curtain by the window moved slightly. The light grew warmer. I felt something was changing, but the fear didn't completely disappear, because even when wounds heal, the scars remain. A new message arrived. "I knew you'd reply one day." That line settled heavily in my chest. I typed, "I'm sorry." My hands trembled as I wrote those two words. For a while, there was no reply. I thought maybe it was too late. Then the shadows around the room slowly began to shrink. The walls started to feel normal again. From behind me, the voice spoke one last time, "Not all delays are the same." I turned around. No one was there, but the heavy presence was gone. Of that I was sure. I looked back at my phone. The final message, "You don't have to wait anymore." The screen went dark. I leaned back on the sofa, took a deep breath. For the first time, I felt truly alone. But this loneliness wasn't frightening anymore. It was light. I don't know whether this experience was real or something inside my mind. But one thing I am sure of: from now on, I won't leave messages for later, because some waiting comes back, and some once gone can never be held again. The room returned to normal. The light was fine, the air was fine, yet even with everything being fine, a sense of unease remained. I stood up and went to the window. Outside it was night, streetlights were on. People were walking. Life was moving on. I saw my reflection in the glass, dark circles under my eyes. But not as empty as before. I went back and sat on the sofa. This time I wasn't just scrolling on my phone. I paused and read the names one by one, some contacts, people I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I could feel it. Even if this story ended here, its echo would remain. I stopped on one name, once very familiar, now distant. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. The call ended. I lowered the phone. Smiled faintly. "Okay," I told myself. I put the phone on the table and stood up. Drank some water, looked at myself in the mirror. Just then, a very familiar feeling behind me. Not heavy, not terrifying, just presence. I closed my eyes. The voice didn't speak anymore, but I could feel it. It wasn't waiting now, it was watching. I opened my eyes and said, "I'm trying." There was no reply, but the air in the room felt a little warmer. That night I couldn't sleep, not from fear, from thought. From the next day on, something changed. I no longer say later. I don't delay answering calls. Even if I'm busy, at least I say, "I'm here," because I know some people don't want words. They just want presence. Sometimes at night I still feel that silence. In the corner of the room, a gentle pressure, but now it doesn't scare me, it reminds me. One night I woke up suddenly. The room was dark. Lying in bed, I said, "Are you still here?" Silence for a moment. Then it felt like my own voice was answering, "As long as you forget." I understood then. This story doesn't end. It moves from person to person. When someone sees a message but doesn't reply, when someone says, "I'll talk later," and later never comes, that's when this story enters someone's home. I'm telling it today because I know tomorrow this story might begin again with someone else, and that person will say, "This happened to me."